All right, everybody, welcome to the Simple Man Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Battisto. I have the pleasure to be interviewing Adam Aho, who is the head coach of University of Mary in Bismarck, North Dakota. Welcome to the show, Coach Aho. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Appreciate you having me.
I'm pretty fired up to have you on. I was just telling you off recording when we first started the show. I like studying different coaches, and I like looking at kind of what they're doing. And obviously I've been a fan of yours for a while. I don't know if it's that obvious, but since you started recruiting me, but you're about to reach your 10-year mark.
And, I just completed my 10th season.
Dude, so first of all, how's that?
It flew by. it's at times I'd probably say my first few years it felt like it was forever, but then these last 5 to 6 years have really flown by.
Yeah, I think at least for me, like my first few years of coaching, it just seemed like they went like super slow.
Yep.
And then this last year was like, dude, we're already like at state. Like this is crazy. I think it means that you've been busy for one, and you guys have been having fun and having success. So I think that definitely goes a lot into that. When you're kind of reaching this 10-year mark, do you feel like you have to kind of stop and kind of look back on your journey a little bit, or is it something that you've really been reflective about?
Oh man, that's an excellent question. It always at times when because each team is different. Even if I have a majority of the guys that are returning on a team, the new recruits, they bring a slightly different dynamic. And especially when we lose seniors from the previous year to the next year's season, every season has been different. It was some different challenge, some different uniqueness to it. And so, yes, it makes me reflect every single year on, hey, did I encounter this the years past? And sometimes there's a lot of similarities, but then yet there's differences. And I know that's kind of counterintuitive on how I said that, but it's one of those things that it makes me think about how I've grown as a coach. If you would watch me run practice my very first year here compared to now, it couldn't be, it's totally at different ends of the spectrum. And partly because of the different guys that we have in the room and where we're at. And hopefully I've become a better coach, and learning. I look back about how I ran things. I'm like, geez, why did I do that? But hopefully that's what I just want to be better. Every day I show up, I want to be better for the guys. I want to be better professionally. I want to be better as a support staff member to our athletic department. Every angle I want to try to improve. So it makes me constantly reflect.
Yeah, I definitely get that, because I think obviously as you evolve, and I have questions about your coaching philosophy later, so I'm gonna save that question in a sec. But I just want to start with a very simple question, but one that's maybe I don't know, a little bit. It's not a softball question. It's why do you coach, man? Why do you do it?
I just love it. That's it all started when I was my sophomore year in college. I originally thought I was going to be a dentist. Then I realized, and then I realized I had to take organic chem, and that dream died real quick. But then I started talking to some people. My high school coach was very influential to me. My dad has been an assistant coach for, what is it now, going on 48 years now. And so I just have been blessed to have had some great coaches and mentors in my life. And so I'm like, well, I think that's maybe what I want to do. I'll teach and I'll coach. If I do it at the high school level, I'll love to do that. So I switched my major, health and physical education. And then then I started going, well, I'd really love to coach college wrestling, and that was just kind of, I would talk to my assistant coaches in college. I'm like, hey, what do I need to do to put me in this position? And so they said, start networking, start doing the little things. And so I just tried to constantly be aware of who I was talking to all the time, trying to make sure I put a good image out there for myself, and just try to work my ass off and yeah, lo and behold, I made it here, and I've been very blessed. Like I said, I do it because I love it. I love making an impact on these guys. I love helping them. Yeah, that's about a simple, long answer I can give you.
I'll take it, man. I'll take it. So again, we're at our 10-year mark. Just talk about just early on, because I think I want to say I would have been a part of your first recruiting class.
Yeah,
Dude, okay. So can I tell you my end?
yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't mean to bring up old stuff.
No,
But I remember after I told you no, I was so torn, because like on the one hand, it's like, my high school team, I had 6 guys on my high school team my senior year.
yep,
And I was like the only state qualifier in my entire county both years that I qualified. And I don't know, part of me felt like I really needed partners right out the gate. And that
sure,
was me
yeah,
at the time. But in hindsight, it's like I think what I ultimately needed is like I needed a challenge, and I needed somebody that, like, I needed a coach that I was going to be bought into.
mm,
And that's why I was so torn, because it was like, dude, this guy's like, he's saying all the right things.
mm.
I actually felt more at home at Mary. And I remember when I told you no, not gonna lie, I kind of cried a little bit. And my mom's like, I was like, that's who I want to wrestle for. And my mom was like, no, you made your decision. Now you're just acting emotionally. Like, you need to follow it. But I kind of touched on it a little bit. What were some of your early challenges when you first got there?
Well, that was exactly it. Recruiting was a major challenge because, you marry since we transitioned to D2. So the first year you marry went D2 was 2008, or that's the first year they were eligible. And and so when they made that transition, obviously from NAI to D2, there was a 2-year waiting period, and a lot of kids left during that time. Rightfully so. They wanted to compete in the postseason, and and they went through a coaching change at the same time. So the program just kind of, I think they always had good individuals here and there, but as far as like the overall depth of the team, and you hit exactly the point, was we didn't have the depth on the team to have great partners throughout the whole lineup, right? And so my first year when I took over, we had 7 kids on a returning roster. And so it was a major challenge to get guys like yourself that were good wrestlers, and guys that I felt like we're going to help change this program around and get it back on the right path. Guys like you, you were one of 20 or 30 kids that were like, man, this guy would be awesome for a program. They chose to go somewhere else because they had a better practice room at the time. And it was demoralizing for a while, but I just had to realize I couldn't take it personal, and I had to move on, and I had to keep on grinding, because I just knew that if we end up getting the right guys in the program, it would eventually turn it around. And so that was my major challenge right away, was getting consistent guys in the room. So we focused on recruiting, basically guys that I thought wrestled really hard, might not have had the most success in high school, because I had to switch my philosophy around a little bit. I just need to get guys in here, and then I need to prove that I can develop guys. So I took guys that just wrestled really hard, that may not have been state placers, or even sometimes state qualifiers, and I recruited them, and I'm like, hey, come here and I'll make you better. And so that's what was my focus for my first 3 to 4 years. And then I was able to sprinkle in a good kid here, a good, better kid here. And then it just started to snowball, because then it made me learn a lot in that process, because I was taking guys that were great kids. They worked their tails off, and I love those guys to death. It was just a challenge getting them to be, competing against the D2 level right away, though, obviously. And some of them did, though, which was awesome. And we took guys that, if they would have wrestled in high school against this other kid, we developed them, and he would beat this other guy. If you would go back to their high school career, he got majored by him. So that was where I was really starting to make my mark and prove to people locally, to prove to guys, coaches across the upper Midwest here, that that we're doing the right things. We just need that key guy to come in and so forth. So.
Yeah, I think, definitely that proof of concept is, I think, so important as a coach, because, like you said, it's like, as a high school coach, we're really just focusing on developing.
Yep.
There's other things, like we're trying to build infrastructure and things like that that's going to help develop and feed into our guys. But at college, it's like you have to develop while also recruiting.
Yep.
I guess, we kind of touched on it already. When you're recruiting guys, generally, like, what are you looking for now? Because I know back then you're looking for guys that work hard and that, you know, maybe aren't super talented right away, but now you have proof of concept. I mean, you've been able to produce All-Americans. You guys have been able to take out, you know, perennial, you know, D2 powers. You know, how has that maybe changed your focus when it comes to recruiting a little bit?
You know, it's still, I'm still true to, you know, my philosophy back then, as far as when I talk to kids, I want kids that, that still work hard, that they're coachable. I mean, that's the first two things I always will ever ask a high school coach. Does he work hard? Is he committed? You know, is he coachable? Because we still need to develop guys. I don't care how good you are when you come in, because how wrestling has evolved in the last, you know, 10 years, my goodness. If you aren't willing to adapt and evolve once you're in college, people are going to figure you out a little bit. So we got to be willing to add things to your arsenal, right? And develop what you're really good at. But in sense of my recruiting, is I recruit a lot now based on relationships, and meaning like I take my team right now. I always ask them, hey, who in your area do you think would be a good fit for our program? Because our culture is a major strength of ours right now. You know, we have a really good team atmosphere, a really good buy-in. And so there's nobody that knows these kids better than their buddies. And so, or in their area. So like when you guys were on, for example, when I was in high school, we'd go to Minnesota Storm Camp, and I would know all these other kids, you know, across Minnesota. So I start thinking about that. Like, well, why don't I ask, you know, Braden Huber, hey, who back in Idaho, who do you know? Who do you think would be a good fit here? And then we kind of start going through there, because, you know, if they have that reputation and they can start going through that process of eliminating some guys that culturally wouldn't be a good fit for our program, then we don't talk to them. I mean, that's how it's really been a major benefit to us. And I rely a lot on coaches that I've developed some good trust with, that know me, you know, then they'll know their kid, like, yeah, I think you would be a good fit for Aho. So that's how we've developed the best retention as well in our program, because when a kid comes here, if he feels like he's got the support of his coach, his buddies, man, that's helped us out a ton.
Yeah, how would you describe, like, because I think you kind of talked about how, like, you're not necessarily your philosophy, but the way that you're kind of running things in the room, and maybe how your team dynamic has changed over the years. How is your coaching philosophy? I guess, you know, what is your coaching philosophy, and how has it evolved since you become head coach?
Well, in simple terms, you know, I kind of have this work hard, play hard mantra. I mean, that's how I grew up. We all know wrestling's really hard. There's no way to get better without hard work. And so I was thankful for my dad growing up. I grew up on a dairy farm, and everything we did was, hey, let's go get this done so we can have time for play, or we can do this fun thing, or he'd make competitions out of everything. And so that's kind of how my coaching philosophy has really evolved. And I'm trying to constantly think about, you know, making this a fun season, because our college wrestling season is long, right? It's grueling. And so I always want to make sure that the guys, when they're excited to show up to practice, you know, if they're not excited to show up to practice, they're not going to get better. And so I'm always trying to think about creating an environment where the guys enjoy being there. It's not stressful. This should be the one time of the day where you can be like, hey, let's go and have fun. Let's go get better. You know, that's what I want. I want that type of environment and atmosphere every single day. And then as far as developing philosophy, you know, I'm trying to take guys that, whatever their strengths are coming out of high school, because they're obviously good at something if they're getting to this level nowadays, right? And so I'm trying to, my job is to bring ideas and to show an individual, hey, what could you add this to your arsenal? How can we make what you're good at even better? So that way, I always talk about, for example, if we're hitting a leg attack, you know, how are you going to score your single leg on a All-American caliber guy? I don't need you to be good at 20 different things and average at 20 different things and not be able to take down an All-American caliber type guy. I need you to be able to have an All-American caliber takedown on anybody. And somebody might be able to stop it 2, 3, 4 times. But what about that 6th or 7th attempt? that's how we're going to get the job done at the end of the day. So that's kind of like my developmental philosophy.
So when you're doing that, it sounds like you're trying to develop that individual style, right? How do you take account that individuality while also like trying to run a practice with a group? I mean,
yeah, no, that's an excellent point. That's been my biggest challenge lately, because I don't want everybody on my team wrestling exactly like somebody else. I like when the guys have their go-to stuff. And so I give the guys a lot of freedom and time to work on what they're good at. And so like during practice a lot, I'll just say, hey, I want you guys hitting your single legs or your go-to takedown to your right, going to your right, go-to takedown, going to your left. And so then it gives me opportunity to kind of walk around and helping the guys individually. Yes, I think it's good to know everything, but like I said, you could be a jack of, would you rather be a jack of all trades and a master of none? So we want like that whole philosophy. I want them to be able to score on national caliber guys. So I do have them. I expose them early on the season to basically everything I know. In the first part of the season when they get on campus, I show them everything we know, right? And I go, okay, now it's your job individually to kind of pick these 3 takedowns, roughly, 3 to 5. Okay, what do you want to get really good at? And I put that on them on, okay, what kind of setups is going to help you get into these takedowns, and then we start narrowing it down, so that way the guys can really develop at a high level. So I don't know. I give them a lot of opportunity to spar. That's the best way I can, because I want them to be comfortable. And one point too, I always talk about the guys doing this as far as if I tell you what to do all the time and out in a match, it gets stressful and it's scrambling, you're going like crazy. If you have to think about, oh shoot, what did Aho tell me to do in this situation? It's too late. That moment's already gone, and then you're already scored on, or that opportunity to score is long gone, right? I need you to take ownership on how you're thinking through that process. So I ask the guys a ton of questions. If you're hitting a takedown, or you're practicing in the room, and I see you do something, it could have been the best takedown, the smoothest, cleanest finish ever. I'd come over and I was, okay, Brian, what were you doing there? And I want you to be able to tell me. I'm like, what did you feel? And I want you to tell me. And I'll ask you a ton of questions so that way, hopefully it sticks. So that way you never forget it. Versus me, obviously there are times and it's appropriate to tell a guy like, hey, I'll ask him, what are you doing? And if it wasn't remotely close to what you say, and I'm like, oh, okay, then now it's a time for me to jump in. Hey, this is what you need to do with your head position. This is what you need to do here. But I try to do a better job of asking the guys questions so they get that critical thinking skills going. And so and I also challenge their partner to tell them what to do. And so that's where our learning, I think I've switched that philosophy in the last 4 years. I've really tried to make an emphasis on that. And, I think our results are really starting to show because of that.
Yeah, I think that's something we're trying to do right now. It gets hard, especially in a high school level, to get guys to be able to individualize a style like that, just because we're still developing fundamentals. Like we have a combination of kids that have been wrestling since they were 5, and then also kids that's like, well, it's like their second year wrestling.
Yep.
Like they don't have those fundamentals yet. But also it's like I'm always trying to balance that. Well, we want to win, but we also like want to challenge these guys and make sure they have a good experience and all those things. So I'm always like personally always conflicting these two things. I mean, do you ever kind of struggle with that?
100%. And people ask me like, what would you do different if I went back to high school? And I'm like, oh boy, that would be a challenge, because exactly what you're saying right there. And I got to give all you high school coaches the utmost credit, because I think you have arguably some of the tougher challenge, exactly to your point about the level of guys that are in your room couldn't be further away from each other, right? And but as far as talking about my experience here is we still have a gap from some guys to here to there, but the good thing is with our culture of our program and our guys, they do an exceptional job when they're sparring with somebody. I always try to split the guys up, so that way they're working with somebody, not the same partner every single day, right? And so they can help bring along somebody else. But then when you're, let's just say if you take like Reese Barnhart, who's a two-time All-American for us now, if he goes with a true freshman next year, and I tell him like, hey, Reese, I want you to show this true freshman, I want you to show this drill to him. I want you to walk him through it. Well, that makes Reese think even more and helps him develop even more. And I'm going to probably ask you this question. Do you think if you'd go back and wrestle after coaching a while, would you be a better wrestler right now?
Yeah. Well, so here's, I actually did compete in a tournament not too long ago. We had a quick turnaround from our high school state tournament to, they had like a USA wrestling, state tournament. And, my background check wasn't going to clear in time to get my coaching certificate.
Oh, no.
I'm like, dude, how am I going to get on the floor? Cause like we had another coach that was like going to be out of town, and they had an open. So, and then I saw something, it was free registration because they had low numbers. So I'm like, oh, I'll just do that and I'll get on the floor. And I go and I'm like, well, I kind of need to like make weight. So I didn't know how much I weigh. I had like a rough idea. I'm like, I know I'm under this weight. So I'm just going to like, say I'm going to weigh that weight. And like a parent, they were having like a UFC fight and had some other parents over. So I went to go watch. I'm like, hey, can I use your scale? And they're like, sure. So like I went and used the scale, and I like to eat now. I'm not cutting weight anymore. So
Yeah.
I'm normally a big eater at tournaments and stuff and social gatherings. And another parent was like, "How come you're not eating?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I'm on a diet or something like that." And another parent was looking at like the wrestler list, and we're like, "Hey, are you wrestling tomorrow?" And then like word kind of got out, and they're like, "Dude, you should totally wrestle tomorrow." And like, part of me was like, I wasn't even sure if I was even gonna wrestle. And I was like, I kind of need to wrestle, but I don't know. I think to answer your question, when I tried competing, I just went back to like, how I used to compete, just hard hand fight and just try to get, my hands locked and lift somebody. Yeah, I don't know. I was like, I don't feel like I got better because like retrospectively, I didn't use any of the techniques that I've been actually using in the room. I just went back to, this is what works.
Sure.
Also, you got to think about who you're wrestling. I was just wrestling guys that it was like their first tournament in like however long. It is what it is. But
how'd the tournament go for you?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of blew through everybody. But the guy in the finals was trying to be buddies with me before.
Oh no.
Which was something like I'm not really used to. But he was like, "Oh, hey," and I'm like, "How's it going?" He's like, "Oh, well, are you wrestling 97 kilos?" And I'm like, "Mm-hmm." And he goes, "Oh, me too. We'll probably see each other if we're in the like." I'm like, "This isn't high school, man. I don't want to be your buddy. Not right now." That guy got so tired. It's like we're like in the first minute. I get a takedown and he like lays flat and he starts like talking and he's like, he said something, but I was like, I kind of responded. I'm like, "Are you saying you're tired?" "Well, I'm gonna cut you." So I let him up and he kept trying to hang out by the edge. So I try like club and circle and get my back to the line so I could take an attack. And he like hung out by the line, like backed up, froze. And I'm not lying. He froze and fell over and fainted. And like, I'm like, dude, I don't think that was real. I think you're just super tired. But I was like, I mean, I guess that's kind of what you get. It's like free registration. It's an open tournament. I'm coaching our guys at the same time I'm trying to compete, but it was just, I don't know. It was silly, man. It was fun.
That's hilarious.
But it was silly. Have you ever thought about competing again?
No. I'm too old now. Shoot, I'm 38 years old now. And I mean, when I hit 30, I remember the day. Like I remember when I turned 30, I don't know what it was, but 30 was a year. I'm like, it took me a lot longer to recover because I practiced with my first 3-4 years here. I practiced every day with the guys, kind of partly because I had to because we didn't have that many partners. Yeah. But I was in good shape then. And I remember when I turned 30 that year, that was a year where I'm like, oh man, my recovery is taking a little more. And the joints started hurting here and there. And I'm like, geez, I mean, I'll still jump in once in a while here, but I'm never going to claim that I'm, Yeah, I can't go. My reaction is slowed down so much. I mean, I still lift just to stay in shape so I don't get hurt, um, but yeah, it's not like I used to, man. It's different.
Well, I feel like when you get older, because I'm learning this too, because it's like my knees and my shoulders and
Yep.
my fingers especially get really bad. Uh, just because kids grab them and stuff like that. But I feel like, I've kind of had to change how I wrestle a little bit more. I actually have to learn how to wrestle. I can't just wrestle hard the whole
Yep.
time. So, I'm trying to play around with like just different positions. But I mean, how would you say like, and this might be, I don't know, an easier question, but how would you say like your wrestling has evolved since you've been coaching and you've been coaching for a while now? How
Yep.
would you like your actual wrestling how has that evolved?
Oh, myself, like if I were to
Yeah.
go and compete, oh
Not
man.
necessarily compete, but just like how you
Yeah,
move and how you, because I know you still probably roll around at least a little bit, right?
yeah, a little bit. You know, I obviously like you kind of hit the point on, I still do things similar to when I was back in college. My instincts kick in here and there, um, but I'm a lot more methodical. Pick yours. I like playing around with stuff. We've been working on this outside step for the last 2.5 years, big time here. And I'm constantly trying to work on that, and I'll surprise myself, and so I'll be able to hit that a few times. But when I start wrestling now, being older, I'm constantly thinking about the fundamentals. Honestly, it's like the push pull, getting the guy out of position. If I would have thought about that when I was competing, I probably would have found more opportunities to score.
Yeah.
It's just the little, like, I think when we're in it and competing, when we're for like the college guys, I think they put so much stress on themselves. And versus me now, if I go and wrestle the guys, there's no pressure on me. I don't care. Like, my pride is long gone as far as like, I mean, I still like winning. I still like getting takedowns. I like scoring, but I like trying things. I like trying to get better. And I'll find myself in a position like, oh, dang, that does work.
Yeah.
that kind of type of thing. So I don't know if that doesn't really answer your question, but I would say like if you'd go back and compare myself when I get on the mat now, there's obviously some similarities, but also drastically different as far as like the moves I'm trying to hit. And because we focus on so many different things. I mean, compared to when I was competing until now, wrestling's evolved. The scrambling is beyond anything that I had any experience when I was competing. Like, I didn't know how to do a leg pass, which was now everybody's doing leg passes. Everybody, you know what I mean? Like, but that's the fun part about my job is, if I'm not trying to evolve and I'm not trying to challenge the guys or challenge myself, well then shoot, I'm not going to give them a good perspective and challenge them. And so that's where I've evolved a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think definitely the part where you said that, when you go in, there's no pressure. So like you can kind of try and do different things. I feel like for me, like I have the same thing. So I try to take that pressure off of our guys. It's like, I know you're in the moment. I know like there's a pressure to win right now, but it's like the only time it really counts, like you're winning, like, yeah, it might help your seed like down the line. But when we get to the postseason, that's when you need to win.
Yep.
I still think guys still need to learn how to win. I think that's important.
Yep.
Like the whole point of spring and summer, like that's where you're going to make your biggest gains. There's no pressure right now.
Correct.
Just be consistent and try to get better literally every single day.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I mean, and I think that's the biggest challenge of today is like trying to decipher, how much pressure to put on yourself on an emphasis on the winning versus developing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you ever figure that answer out exactly, let me know.
Well, so this is where I pay attention. You guys play a lot of dodgeball.
We do.
So let's talk about that. How did that get brought into the practice room, and then what was the reason behind it?
Well, when I took over in 2013, so the fall of 2013 was my first year here, and I wanted to make sure that I set a standard, and I was trying to change the culture of the program and make sure that the emphasis was on winning. And but I also had to realize that the guys that I just took over were used to what the coach previously did a lot, right? So So right away, I was kind of just hard nosed. Oh, we're not done. We're not playing dodgeball anymore. All this stuff, right? And then I could just tell that the guys were they hated me probably. And I'm like, maybe we need to I had to go back, and I was trying to be somebody I wasn't too, in the sense like I mentioned, the whole work hard, play hard, right? I'm like, if the guys don't have fun come to practice, they're not even gonna get better. So then I'm like, all right, guys, one day I'm like, you guys want to play some dodgeball? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. So, cause they played dodgeball every day prior to me, like the years prior. Right. And so we started bringing that back, and the guys enjoyed coming back to practice, and they could tell that, we didn't do it every single day. And just like the guys though, I enjoy playing dodgeball. I love it. It's fun. I love, you know what I mean? It's one of those things that we're having a good time. But now once dodgeball's over, let's get back to work, that kind of thing. And so, we've had that stick around ever since, and we don't do it every day, obviously. And some days though, we have to put time limits. Otherwise we'll play dodgeball for, 45 minutes. It's like, holy crap. So we have to put time limits on the games, and we try to create different games, like where you can only throw underhand, or you can only throw frisbee style, or you got to throw with your opposite hand. You mix in different things and challenges. And but it is something where the guys, I know when we're playing dodgeball, they come to practice a little more amped up, a little more excited. You know what I mean? Then that's what's fun about it.
Yeah, it's funny hearing kids like, like they'll be talking about like a game, like way after like practice is done. It's like we've already had a hard workout, and they'll still be talking about the game. It's like, no, you cheated.
For sure. Yep.
But I mean, I think it like you said, it just adds an excitement, and we got to remember too, like they're kids.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
They're in class all day. High schools, I mean, they're in class all day. They finally get to see their buddies. I was kind of the same way. I was like, we need to be tough. We need to be hard nosed.
For sure.
And, that's just not like how kids are normally.
Yeah.
So it's always trying to kind of adapt to them a little bit.
It's a balance. It's constantly a balance.
Yeah. Because you still need to work hard. You still need to get better.
100%.
But yeah, I don't know. If there was ever like a dodgeball tournament, I mean, do you see, maybe your guys ever entering?
They 100% would. Absolutely. They actually, it's funny you bring that up, because Mary, our student life, does a dodgeball tournament. They haven't done it. Shoot, when was the last time they did it? I'm trying to think. They did it, I think it was before COVID, and all of our wrestlers entered it, and they just wiped the floor with everybody.
So I ended up wrestling at CCB, and every year, and they hadn't done it since before COVID, but they call it the Runner Olympics, and it was each team would compete against each other. Like the boys teams would compete against each other, and the girls teams would compete against each other. And they do things like like tug of war we'd get a rope from the wrestling room, we'd use that.
Yeah.
Like dodgeball, it's like tug of war and dodgeball was like where we were best. But I don't know, it's fun, man. It's fun. So talking about just University of Mary, how would you say like the culture has evolved over the last few years? And you can talk about just the like the Mac mob, like
sure.
Talk about that. Like you guys, it seemed like you guys have a ton of people coming out and watching duels.
Yeah, no, it's well, I'll put this in perspective. My first 2 years, we were terrible at wrestling. I'm not gonna lie. I think my first year we won 2 duels, and one of the duels we won was because we had less forfeits than the other team. I mean, it wasn't good. And then my second year, we only won 1 duel, and so I grew up in a small town in Minnesota, and I only remember 1 duel in my high school career where it wasn't packed. And when I say packed, I mean kids weren't sitting alongside the mat packed. I mean, it was I was very fortunate. I grew up in a wrestling community, right? And so that was always my vision. I'm like, gosh, why do we not have the high school kids or elementary kids, or like, where are all these people? Why aren't they coming out to watch a college level team right in their backyard? And so that was always my vision. But I'm like, well, why would they want to come out here if we're not good, if we're not competitive? And so that was what I focused on, trying to get to be better. We have to be better before we can really start inviting people out here to watch this product. We got to put a better product on the mat. And so once we slowly started competing and we got the right guys in our program and we started to compete against other schools, and even though we still lost here and there, but we would have good duels. We'd have good matches out there. And that's when we started really promote. And when I really encouraged my guys on the team to get involved with other organizations on campus to start getting the student population out here. And that was what also really helped. And and I've had a lot of great help with my staff members. Carson Henry, who's my assistant coach right now, he did a great job. You know, when he was here for his graduate or his master's degree as a GA, we developed a you know, kind of how we set our gym up now with a student section and a youth section alongside the mat. And our student section's been really popular with the general students and our other student athletes on campus. They come there and they can have some friendly banter with the opposing team because we put it over on that side. And so it's just a great atmosphere in the sense of I love a hostile environment. And our gym is smaller, right? And so we can kind of pack it in. And it's kind of like West Gym if you watch any UNI duels, and you'll see that how packed that gym is. That's what we want. We want this small environment where it's hostile, and it's I don't know, and it just kind of feeds off of each other. Now that we're having some success, people want to come back out here, and then we're always constantly trying to evolve that too, you know, because we do mat side seating. We're trying to bring our alumni down. We're trying to do you know, intermission entertainment stuff. And we want to make it and what's our entertaining value? So if we bring out somebody from the general public that doesn't have any experience with wrestling, you know, what's going to leave them when they leave here? What's going to bring them back? Is it solely the wrestling, which sometimes, you know, our wrestling, you know, if you've never watched wrestling before, it can be kind of confusing sometimes, right? And so how are they going to come out here if they don't have a good experience? What's that experience that they're leaving with that's going to draw them back? And so that's kind of our Mac Mob mentality is we want to make sure that we're excited. I mean, these guys work their tails off. I always tell them, like, I want to bring as many people here so that you can go show off, you know, in that type of mentality. You know, we don't have to be cocky or arrogant about it, but I want you guys to enjoy yourselves. I want you to have fun when you're out there and compete. It should be fun. And so that's, like I said, that's what we're trying to build. And yeah, I mean, I've always challenged the other D2 programs in the country. I want to know what everybody's average attendance is because I think that we'd blow everybody out of the water personally, but I could be wrong. I mean, I take a lot of pride in the sense that I always claim that we have the best wrestling, home dual wrestling atmosphere in Division II wrestling.
Yeah, it looks fun. So you talked about you do like you know, halftime or mid duel entertainment stuff. I went right after I was done competing, I went and I was a J-Rob counselor for a little bit.
Oh,
and
yeah.
kind of standoffish from Jay because I was like, I was like, oh my God, it's Jim Robinson. Like he just yelled at me for no apparent reason. Like, you know, I was kind of put off by him, but eventually I kind of like, oh, he's a good guy. So I just started trying to have lunch with him every day, trying to pick his brain. He talked about when he first started, they would have like juggling acts and guys doing like magic tricks and like silly things like that. Cause he told me it's like the family dollar, you know, it's like, where are you going to go on a Friday night? You're going to go to the movies or you're going to go watch a fight, you know, with like some entertainment value, you know? So what kind of stuff do you guys do to kind of promote and, you know, what's your halftime entertainment look like?
Well, and that's something that we're really trying to do a better job this year. It's been mainly, we have a sponsor that does it's a tire toss thing. So everybody buys a little puck or like a little mini tire, it looks like. And so you can throw it in our mascot has a ring on the ear. And so whoever's closest to that ring where that tire lands, they win. I can't remember. They win something. I'm rarely out there during the halftime, so I don't really see what's going on, but that's the main thing. And then, you know, next year we're coming up with a few ideas that, you know, we want to do like the walk the plank type thing because, you know, we're the Marauders. And so we're also looking at getting some sumo suits, you know, stuff like that to put our students in. You know, those are the things that we want. that we want to keep evolving in. And we throw out t-shirts obviously in between matches and stuff like that to get the students involved. But we've got a really good sponsor base right now too. So we're trying to get more and more of our sponsors involved with, doing little giveaways in between matches. And so that way it keeps the fans engaged. And then also we've done some youth wrestling and, some little kids wrestling here and there too. We haven't done that for a few years, but that's something else that gets those youth kids involved, which is fun.
Yeah, I get frustrated a little bit just with CCB. It's like, you have a Division I program in your backyard. How come you're not going to watch? If you have a college team around you, because I didn't really have that in Santa Cruz. The closest one was like maybe 45 minutes away with Stanford. But it's just like, if you got one that's in your town, how come you don't go?
Yeah.
Like, go, and I don't know. But I think you guys do a pretty good job of social media and promote it that way too. I don't know who your graphics guys is or who runs the account. Maybe it's you, but they got a pretty good sense of humor.
No, it's that's my assistant, Carson Henry. He does a phenomenal job. I mean, he's got a gift, and he actually now is the athletic department. He works and does stuff for the athletic department. And so I just hope that, I hope the university never loses him, because he is talented. He's one of those guys that the guys love him. He's got some great ideas. He's very creative. I can't take any credit for that, because that is all him at all. And he's the guy.
If you hired him, then you can take some credit.
Well, I mean, that's about the only credit I can take. But no, he's very gifted.
Yeah. When you look for assistant coaches, I know you just put up something recent, or I don't know how recent, but I know you were looking for another grad assistant relatively recently. When you look for coaches, I guess, what essentially do you look for to kind of add onto your staff? Because I know you kind of have this philosophy where you want to evolve and you want to be creative and you want to allow the guys to develop their style. But you also know sometimes you bring in a young guy and they're like, you got to be like, how do you kind of develop your coaches? And, what do you look for when you're hiring somebody?
Yeah, I mean, somebody that just is gonna, how do I say this? Like, buy into our program, if they're gonna be all in. And the other thing is, I like being challenged. I love new ideas. In the sense that I always tell my assistants, or any of my guys even, you can come into my office and we can have an open conversation, and whatever's said in this room stays in this room. But at the end of the day, when we leave this room, you guys have to understand and respect that I have to make a decision, right? And so once that decision is made, all I expect is that you back me 100%. And I'm going to give you, hopefully that you understand by you being in my office, if you have an idea, or if you think that something should be done this way, and if there's a disagreement, I'll listen. And if I make a decision, it's not the way that you saw it, I just hope 100% I am thoroughly thinking about what you're saying, and I'm going to take it into consideration. But again, I have to make a decision at the end of the day. And all I'm asking is that you have 100% trust and buy-in that I'm making a decision what's best for the program. Every decision I make is for the program. It's not for me. It's not for any one of the wrestlers, whatever. It's for the program and the development of the program. And does it support the mission of the university? That's what I look for. And I also look for guys that, no offense, like guys that I like to be around. If I feel like I can, as a staff, that we can gel well together. If the guys realize that there's some animosity between us as a coaching staff, well, then it's going to be tough for them to buy into us as well. So we got to be a very cohesive group of guys, in the sense that we're all on the same page. We all support each other. We're all having fun. So a lot of it's personality wise, I'm not going to lie, when I'm interviewing guys, if I feel like you're not on the same page, if you're not going to add value some way, somehow, then it's going to be tough to work with you,
No, I agree. I'm very thankful. One of the guys that I coach with, he wrestled at TCB. We actually kind of have a similar story. But he's fun. He's fun to hang out with, and we're friends outside the room.
Yeah.
So the only thing is sometimes, like, we're on the same page most of the time. So sometimes we butt heads. We try and make sure we do it outside the room. That will come back in the room. We all got to be on the united front.
Correct.
But yeah, so obviously, you're a head coach. You're kind of at the you're at the tiller, right? You're kind of steering the ship. How do you, and we kind of talked about already, how do you kind of build your team identity and kind of what your team is about, like culturally?
Well, we have this quote, and it goes, we can live our lives either out of gratitude or resentment. There is no middle ground. And and that's something that we always have, like every guy in our program has to memorize that quote. And I bring that to ground us, to have some humility. And then we also do every year, every fall, we do a camping trip with our guys. I take away their phones. And so that way they get to know each other. It's basically, we do team building stuff as well, but then they develop some core values for our program. And every year we've done the core values things for 2 seasons in a row now. And it's not, I don't develop them. I basically am there as far as I ask the guys questions as they're having these discussions, as far as what words or that they want to describe or have as core values for our program. And so when they're going through that process, I'm a facilitator. I ask the guys questions, and that has been one of the biggest benefits to our program, in the sense that they take a lot of ownership in the program. And I tell every kid this, and you could ask any one of my guys on the team, I go, this is just as much as your program as it is mine. However, I just happen to make decisions at the end of the day. Okay. Yeah. And so I try to give the guys as much ownership in the program. I go, hey, if you were the head coach of this program, is this how you'd like things done? Is this how you would expect your team to operate and act? So I try to put that back on them a ton. If you were all of a sudden AD walks in and you had to answer his questions, what would you say? You know what I mean? Those are I try to get the guys to think as far as having the program as theirs, because it seems like they care more about it.
So I mean, I think that's great that you can have those kind of conversations with guys. I mean, they're a little bit older, so hopefully there's some maturity, at least at some level. Do you feel like that's something you could do it if you were a high school coach? Would you be able to have those conversations?
Well, I mean, man, that's a good question. I guess you don't know until you ask them, right?
Yeah.
You never know. I would say that, see, the way I grew up was way different than most. So it's really hard for me to get in the minds of some other kids, because I was fortunate enough when I was young. I had a lot of responsibilities early on. I think I was mature enough. If you would have asked me as a freshman in high school, I'd be like, hey, what do you think about this? And like, if this was your program, would you be happy with, how the guys are acting? And it's hard for me to relate outside of, in a different perspective because of how I grew up, I guess, personally. But I guess at the end of the day, what I found and what I think is kids are always looking for more responsibility than they lead on. If I ever ask any one of my guys, or I get personal with them, and when I talk to them, I never talk to them like if it's I always pull them off one-on-one. And anytime I sit down there and have a one-on-one conversation with a kid, and I ask them to be better, or if they're being their best in those situations, kids aren't dumb. They're smart, right? And we do a self-evaluation for them. I sit down and have a 45-minute or an hour conversation with every kid on my team in the spring. And we go through a laundry list of everything I can basically think of, whether it's technique, them as a person, academics. And I ask them pointed questions about how they can get better. What's going to make you better? And it's not me saying it. I don't sit there and say anything. I ask them a ton of questions. And they are way harder on themselves than I would be. And so my point of me bringing that up is they care way more than we think. A lot of times with social media or like society, they feel like they need to play it off as they don't, or, but I try to make sure that they know how much they impact and influence the team and every decision that goes on, because I make decisions based on where the team's at, where it's going, how do we get better, can we challenge this guy to be better. I just need everybody doing their best, so that way we can get to this place, man, I kind of went off on a tangent there, down a rabbit hole, but no, I think at the end of the day, I think anybody, even my two boys are 8 and 10 years old, and I sit down, I have those conversations one-on-one with them, and you all of a sudden start to see the wheels start spinning. And I think they know. It's just that it's scary sometimes to have more responsibility. But if you trust them, like my dad let me fail all the time. Holy cats. I mean, I'll never forget, and I don't mean to take too much time here, but like he made me fix a fence one time and build a fence. And he let me go. And he's like, and I made fence with him, built fence, I don't know how many times to keep cows out of an area, right? And it was a stretch, maybe, I don't know, 50 to 75 yards. And all of a sudden, and I did it, and I was like, oh man, this is good. Like, yeah, my dad gave me some responsibility. And then he comes back after I got done, and I go, hey, what do you think? And he goes, and I start looking at it after he starts looking, walking up and down, and I'm like, oh crap, the wire's not as tight as I know what my dad would have done. And he goes, not bad. And I'm like, oh crap, not bad. Wasn't good. And then he just asked me, he's like, do you think this fence is going to keep the cows out? I'm like, oh yeah, well. And then he goes, okay, so then next year after the winter, when the snow comes through here and it puts all the weight on the fence, and then the next spring, do you think that wire's still going to be tight enough next year? Then I start going, I think so. He goes, you think so? Can you guarantee me that this is not going to get too loose to keep the cows out? And he goes, I think you got your answer. So like, I knew what was right, but he just kind of, but he wasn't a dick about it. He basically supported me. He's like, all right, well then fix it and make it better. But he let me fail a lot. And that's what helped me out a ton.
I find that hard because I think failure is so important, right? Especially when a young kid's development. I feel like it's hard for me to do that sometimes. For one, like I'm not that old. Like I'm 27. I'm not that old. But it's like it's hard for me to take that kind of a role because I feel like that's a parent role, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can do that to an extent as a coach. I just feel like with younger kids, if I do that, and parents, I mean, most parents kind of get it, but there are some parents where it's like, why are you saying that? Like, why do you just help them? Like, why don't you just do that? I mean, I don't know. If you were in my spot, like, how would you kind of handle the situation? Would you let a kid fail, or would you? Because part of me is the competitive part. Like we need to get going now. We don't have time. But
it's an excellent question. I think it depends on the kid too, personally. Yeah. If you think the kid can handle that, and if you can put your arm around them and be like, all right, buddy. Because some kids need to have that personal experience. Pain will make, I think pain is the best influencer for change and development, personally. If something hurts, man, do you want to do that again? No, right? Like you get headlocked in a match, do you want to get pinned? Do you want to get headlocked and pinned again? If you truly care, right?
Yeah.
Conversely, like some kids, if they don't win, they're like, screw it. They just give up, right? But I think we need to teach kids that in wrestling, I'll even ask you this. How many matches that you wrestled went exactly how you planned it in your head?
All of them. No, I'm just kidding. Probably, yeah. I don't even think, maybe a few, just if it was like, yeah. Maybe
because there's so many uncontrollables. We have to be willing to adapt in everything we do and problem solve. And if these kids just get so gun-ho on, it's got to go exactly this way, then all of a sudden anxiety starts happening. And that's when kids don't wrestle free. They tighten up because they're so afraid of making a mistake. Well, and I use Penn State as an example all the time. And I wish, man, I would love if I could follow Cale Sanderson around for a month, holy crap. I mean, that would be amazing. I don't know what exactly they're doing, but those guys look like they wrestle stress-free. Doesn't matter what happens. So do you think that they're okay with making mistakes? I'm sure they're not happy about it, but no. Does it do they like throw their arms up ever? Do they ever throw a fit? No, they just get back up and they keep going and they're working on scoring. And so my point to your question, to answer your question, I think it's really important for these kids to fail and to learn how to come back with that, because of that builds more character than anything, than winning. I know it builds way more character than winning. You have to be willing to overcome those failures and those mini failures. I truly believe that. I think it's really important. I mean, it's just like, for you to get better at wrestling, like if you're a practice partner, if you're practicing every day with somebody that you're running through like a hot knife through butter, you're not going to get better. You have to have that guy that's going to challenge you, right? And push you. That's the only way you're going to grow. And that point, if you scored every takedown you ever shot, sure, your confidence would probably be like through the roof, but you always want to be like, there's always somebody out there better somewhere, somebody that's going to be tough. So you got to make sure you're willing to put yourself in those positions where you're going to deal with some challenges to overcome that.
Yeah, I agree. I think you hit the nail right on the head. You talked about Cale Sanderson. That's something that I like to study a lot. But I feel like every new like alumni that's graduated does like an interview, and like the curtain kind of gets peeled back just a little bit more. Where I'm kind of like, what are they doing? Who, just kind of general question, because you kind of grew up, around all these coaches. I can't remember, is it Nagel? Is that how you pronounce his last name? So
yes. Yep.
There's one that coached you, and then there's one that I know his son wrestled at University of Minnesota, and then
Correct.
He was coaching at North Dakota State for a while.
Yep.
And he might have been at Concordia.
Yes, he was at.
You've been around all these coaches, right? Who are your kind of general coaching inspirations, either from growing up in your career, or who are you looking at right now and you kind of trying to learn from?
Like I said at the very beginning, Clay Nagel was my high school coach, and he actually grew up just west of Bismarck here, about 45 minutes, which is kind of ironic. So his name is pretty well known in the state of North Dakota. Excuse me. I think he did I was blessed. I think he's one of the best coaches I've ever been around. The way he motivated kids, the way he interacted with all of us, the way he challenged us. I very, very blessed to have him in that sense. And then, J-Rob, at that time when I was growing up, Minnesota was good. They were tougher than hell. And I didn't know anything about Jay. I've never been to a camp with him. So I've never really, to be honest with you, I don't even know. I think I've shaken his hand because when I was at NDSU, we dueled Minnesota. So I shook his hand, but I've never talked to him personally. But when you mentioned him about the whole experience with the Family Dollar value. I have seen and read a lot about how he developed that following at Minnesota. So that's where I kind of stole that whole entertainment value idea from. So he's inspired me in that way without even talking to the guy ever. And then as far as my college coach, Bucky Mon, he was an old school guy, hard nosed, what I did learn from him, I learned how to talk to people. That guy could talk to anybody for hours about anything. And so he was kind of one of those guys that helped me out a lot. He actually was one of the reasons why I got hired here, originally. He vouched for me. And Jim Makovsky, I worked for him down at Minnesota State Mankato for 2 years. That guy's a wealth of knowledge. He's very charismatic. That guy knows everybody as well. So I learned a ton from him. And then my dad is, I think has been a huge inspiration to me, is about how to interact with kids. Cause he's been coaching for 40 plus years now and at the high school level, but coaching's coaching too, and learning how to deal with people. So he's been a huge reason for why I love what I do. But now in college coaching, I'm trying to emulate Penn State. Why not? That's kind of, they're obviously the pinnacle of wrestling right now. They're the standard. Like I said, if I could go and watch a week of practice at Penn State, man, I would pay whatever money probably that I could afford, I guess. but that is something where I just love how those guys, like how calm and collected they are. You know, and I don't know what it is, man. They're doing something right, obviously.
Yeah, I see a couple things. So like for one, we were fortunate to have his cousin Mikhail Sanderson. He was on our staff last year, and he's one of the cousins. And he's from that area, and then Jake Varner is from Bakersfield. So like there's
Yes,
people that know him, and I'm pretty good friends with the Bakersfield High School guys.
sure.
They know him. So and then I'm just like anytime something happens, whether it's like footage or somebody records something, or there's like a podcast with like one of the guys that used to be part of Penn State. It's like I try to listen. I just try to look for like a little nugget of something. But just from what I hear, it's like they don't lift a lot. They don't run a lot. It just seems like it's very much about developing wrestling skill and doing it in a way where you can be free and you can go and make mistakes. And some days, like maybe it's a little more structured, and some days it's just like go and do it. I just find it hard to like I kind of have a general idea of what they're doing. I just find it hard to translate to high school just
Yeah,
because again, not all the guys like that we bring in have those fundamentals down, you know.
yeah,
So it's kind of hard, but I think just like culture wise, just trying to make sure kids have fun, they have a good experience. I try to say fun as often as possible. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. If you're a coach right now and you're not trying to look at what they're doing, I mean, I don't know. You got to be closed minded or have an ego problem or something. I don't know.
no, I think you're exactly right, and that's where I had to take, you know, like I said, 6 years ago is when I really started to um, really try to change on what I'm doing and try to evolve. And you know, I want to be true to myself. I can't. I got to be authentic, right? I got to be who I am. But you know, if we're not trying to evolve our wrestling, man, we're gonna learn. Like Kale says, we're gonna learn a painful lesson from somebody else. You know, and that's just how our sport's been going. So, no, that's exactly it. I mean, but like you said, you know, you know, and I mentioned this earlier too in the preseason, we're doing a ton of fundamental stuff just to make sure the guys understand all these little fundamental things. And then later on in the year, we're doing a lot of sparring where I'm letting the guys kind of go. Um, and I don't know, I'd love to ask Kale if that's how he structures it or not, but that sometimes I'm like, well, maybe that's probably what they're doing. So let these guys kind of figure stuff out, let them play, wrestle. And because I think that's important for them to evolve and take ownership of themselves.
Yeah, no, I agree. I got a couple more questions. We're kind of getting near the end
Yeah.
here.
Yep.
One question is, what is barn cat tough? What does that mean to you?
Well, it all started with, I grew up on a dairy farm, right? And we had barn cats all over the place. And we had this one tomcat, and he was beat up. His ears were frozen off, and his shoulder was, you know, like he must, I don't know what happened, but it looked like he had a broken arm. So he kind of walked kind of like goofy. His tail was broken. So it's kind of, you know, must have, I think I actually shut his tail in the door one time in the barn, but not on purpose.
The climate
But
activists are listening right now, dude. They're gonna.
but so anyway, this cat was old too, and it was beat up. It was kind of, I don't know, towards the end of its life. Well, randomly one day, yeah, at the end of our barn, we had this big open door, and this random stray tomcat starts walking in the barn. I'm like, holy cat, that thing's huge. And out of nowhere, our tomcat, like on our in our place, comes flying out from the rafters and hits this cat. And this stray tomcat was at least twice the size of ours, right? And there's fur flying all over, and it's just a ball of cats. Just the next thing you know, that stray tomcat is flying out back where he came from through the pasture, and our tomcat was chasing him. And my dad and I were just sitting there like, what just happened? I mean, it literally happened in a matter of 10 seconds, everything, right? And my dad's like, that's barn cat tough. I'm like, what? And so he goes, that thing was going to be, he'd have rather died than to have this stray tomcat come in here and take over his place. And I'm like, hell yeah. Like, and that's kind of where it started. So it's just like, you know, I tell the guys, like, you'd rather you die than give up your place. You know, when you step inside that circle, you would do whatever it takes to get the job done. You know, so that's the type of mentality where you're willing to fight to the death type thing. So
when you first like told that story to your guys, like was that like before a duel? Because I feel like I'm ready, man. Like that's like next period. Like all right, guys. You know, we got to be barn cat tough.
yeah.
Where the story like how'd you kind of like how you said, was it like before a duel? Was it before practice one day? A team
Oh
meeting?
man. You know, I feel like honestly, I started that, you know, with the guys, shoot, maybe 8 years ago, probably. You know, I think I told them the story, and I think you're probably right. I think I did tell them before duel. I'm like, and then this is kind of random and weird, but like I remember when I was competing in college, like I love like animal stuff. Like I think of the lions out in Africa when you know, hyenas try to take over their territory and they go fight and like defend their territory. Like that stuff just gets me jacked up. Like that animal instinct to like go and fight. I don't know so that's kind of what I brought up one time. And I'm like, and it just kind of spurred that memory of that whole story. And I'm like, it's barn cat tough, baby. Like that's what we got to do. And that's kind of how that whole thing started and kind of went from there.
Yeah, dude, I got like goosebumps right now. I'm a passionate guy, so it gets easier for me to, I don't know, just get fired up. So I got one more question, and then maybe when we're done recording, if I could just talk a little bit more. But we got so Jay has this, you know, famous documentary on him and his program that Flo did. It's called Keeper of the Flame.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's such like a big phrase, and I remember like talking to him a little bit about that. But he just talked about, you know, these stories from, you know, they lost the duel, and like, you know, he goes to one van, all the other guys go to the other van, and it's like, you know, like so and so, you know, tears the ACL, and then there's a couple guys that transfer, and a couple guys that, it's like throughout this whole like long period of time where he's trying to build this program, all of these like valleys and peaks and valleys, all these ups and downs that kind of happen over this time span. He had to be a keeper of the flame the whole time. And you know, I guess for you, like, you know, when you first came in, like how have you been able to be a keeper of this flame for so long? Like, because just from an outsider looking at it, it's like, man, they're getting a little bit better every single year. But I know there's stuff going on that's like that's challenged you. And I guess how have you been able to just kind of stay focused and keep that vision this whole time?
Oh, that's an excellent question. It's funny.
Man.
No, well, I'm not gonna lie. After year two, I think it was after midway through my second year here in the springtime. I remember going to my wife and I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I'm not the guy, right? Like I question myself a ton. And you know, and she kind of said something to me. She said almost exactly what my mom had told me when I was in college one time. And what that was she goes, "What are you gonna do? Quit?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not a quitter. Like I'm not gonna quit." And the reason I say that about my mom, backstory, when I was in college, was it after my third year, I think after my third year, I had a spring meeting with my head coach, Bucky Mon, and he was telling me about, you know, he's recruiting all these guys into the program and to challenge us. And he goes, yeah, I'm going to bring this one guy in from Montana. He's really good. And his name is Vince Selman, and him and I are good buddies to this day. And he's like, I'm bringing him in here to beat you out. And I'm like, well, screw you. You know, in my head, I'm like, well, screw you. Like what? Yeah. And then, so then I called my mom after this meeting or whatever. And I told her the story, what Bucky had said. And she goes, what are you going to do? Quit? And I go, well, no. She goes, well, then you better get to work. And so that's what's constantly going through my head about, you know, when I find struggles in this situation, and I tell the guys this now, like, you know, when you're struggling with something, just go one more day, you know, one more day. Or even like in a wrestling match, I try to break it down to 20 seconds at a time. I go, hey, can you guys wrestle 20 seconds pretty hard? And they're like, well, yeah. Okay, well then do it 20 seconds. And once that 20 seconds is over, then do another 20. And then do another 20. You know what I mean? Like, so my point about the whole keeping the flame type thing, I mean, that's what I always try to challenge the guys with is like, hey, you don't have to, it's not a year thing. It's just one day at a time. Let's go one day. You know, can you be disciplined and dedicated, and can you do this for one day? Oh yeah, that's not too bad. So we try to break things up into bite-sized pieces, to try to, so that way it's not stressful, and because, and it always comes back to the work hard, play hard. Hey guys, smile. I always try to tell the guys, smile. We're having fun. Like, you, if you ever watch me coach on TV or like on our webpage or whatever stream, I might be out there like, hey, stay locked in, smile. Like, I'll be giving these guys all these visual cues like, hey, smile, you're having fun. Just relax. Like, there's nothing to be stressed out about right now, and the last thing is, I don't, being a college wrestling coach, don't make a ton of money, but I do it because I love it. I want to be the guy that, I want to impact the guys. I feel like I can be an influence somehow, some way, a mentor. What I love getting is wedding invitations. I love going to my guys' weddings. That's so much fun for me to see, how they've gone off and matured and find a spouse. That's some of the most rewarding things that I could ever do. And so my goal is to make sure these guys know that I'm there to support them no matter what. I'm kind of that father figure, per se, I guess. Somebody that they can come to and talk to about anything. I mean, you should hear some of the stories I've heard from some of these guys. Man, I've been to siblings' funerals. I've been to fathers, some of my guys, their parents passed away. I'm there. That's what I want them to know, that no matter what, through the thick and thin, I'm there. I'm not going to quit on them. And that goes back to the whole quitting thing. They made a commitment to come here. I'm not going to quit on them. No matter what happens, I'll be here. And so I think that's what's really kept me going and kept me going with this program, in a sense that when I took over the program, I remember the AD asked me what my goals were. I go, I want to win a national title. I mean, plain simple. That's what my goals are still. That's what drives me. I want to win a national title, but I want to do it the right way. I don't want to just, and I take a lot of pride on developing guys. I love guys that come in and go through, freshman to senior. I mean, I'll take a transfer if I can, but I love developing guys. I love to see the growth. That's the most rewarding thing in the world. Max Bruss this year was an All-American for the first time in his career. That guy has worked harder than anybody I've ever seen. He's the most mentally tough human I've ever been around, that I've ever seen in my life. And that was one of the most rewarding accomplishments that that I've been able to experience with him. I mean, it wasn't about me. He did it all. And but that's why I do it.
Man, I think just recently I've kind of been having that, like, I think I kind of alluded to a little bit, just that internal crisis of like, where I want to win, but it's like, I don't want to, like, it's like, at what cost,
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to choose one or the other. I want to have both. And I think it's just, you just got to be doing it for a long time. Like, it's not, there's no shortcuts.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe you could go to a place where they have all these things already in place, but again, it's kind of like you're kind of quitting on this and you're moving to something else,
Yep.
But I really appreciate you, Coach, coming on, and I mean, this has been fun.
I really appreciate you having me. This has been awesome. I mean, we could probably ramble on and talk for
I can talk to you the whole time, man. I got work here in a little bit, but I want to talk about a couple things after. But man, just like I said, thanks for coming on. And what's next for University of Mary? What are you guys having going on coming up?
Basic graduations tomorrow, actually, and so then our summer training starts, and we'll have a bunch of guys that are sticking around and training, and so I'm really excited about that, because our goals are to win a national title next year, and I think that we got the pieces to do it. But just like anything, it's going to take a lot of hard work this off season, and I'm excited to see how much the guys improve, because they're hungry. They're not satisfied, which is really awesome to see. And so, yeah, that's what we're striving for.
All right. Well, I'll be watching.
Appreciate it.